Hi, everyone. Welcome to Narcissism Recovery Podcast. My name is Yitz Epstein. I am your host. I am a narcissistic abuse life coach, and today I'll be discussing healing sexual shame. So, sexual shame, from my understanding, is one of the most painful emotions a person can experience. And obviously, there's shame, and I would say sexual shame is a little bit more specific and a little bit more intense, perhaps more painful. It's essentially the idea that we are just disgusting for having desires, for having impulses, regards to sexuality, regards to who we're attracted to. In general, we just have negative, shameful attitudes about ourselves, our own drives, and sex. So I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, what are the symptoms that you are struggling with sexual shame, and what to do if you are in fact struggling with sexual shame and you are struggling to sort of just connect with another person in a healthy sexual way. So essentially, when you have shame, right, if you've ingested shameful attitudes about sex from perhaps parents or your family of origin where you were not necessarily allowed to feel safe and comfortable exploring yourself, developing a sexual identity, what will end up happening is you'll have sexual shame. You'll feel sexually shameful about yourself. So in essence, this creates barriers between intimacy and connection. It doesn't allow us to really feel vulnerable and open up and express ourselves in a really deep core way. And the way I see it is that our sexuality is really core to our identity. I would say it's one and the same, tied up with who we are and our true self or our soul. So you can imagine if somebody feels sexually shameful, then ultimately it's going to affect almost all of their relationships, most specifically our intimate ones. So the following are some of the symptoms that are going to be found in someone who is struggling with sexual shame. And firstly, shameful feelings about your body. If you have poor body image, perhaps you have a negative self-image, and as a result of feeling shameful, what you'll do is you'll scapegoat a certain flaw about your body, and you'll say, okay, well, that's the reason why I am shameful, when in reality, it may or may not be the reason. Deep down, there's a core cause of just feeling shameful about the fact that you have a sexual energy or a sexual drive, which, by the way, we all do. So to feel sexually shamed is really a trap, because you can't get out of it. You can't just decide, oh, I don't want to feel my sexuality. It is part of who you are. So ultimately, you feel trapped with those feelings of sexual shame, which create devastating effects. Hating one's sexuality. Feeling like my sexuality or one's sexuality is separate from oneself, just disconnecting from it because you feel so terribly about it. Escaping into a false self. I talk about narcissism all the time. I believe narcissism and narcissistic abuse is done to avoid shame, most specifically sexual shame. So if a person who feels sexually shameful will do whatever they could to get out of it and abuse narcissistically to feel powerful, because they feel ultimately so humiliated and so powerless within their own life. Seeing sex as a weakness, seeing it as a proxy to abuse or control or to gain leverage in a relationship, hating the opposite sex or hating the sex that you are attracted to. Ultimately, if you have a sexual impulse and the associated with that impulse is shame, whenever you feel that impulse towards the other person you're attracted to, you're going to feel that shame. Over intellectualizing or overthinking or spiritualizing sex, just creating just too much meaning around it, not letting the spontaneity about it. Again, it's just defending against that. I don't want to feel the vulnerability that would happen if I connect with somebody in an intimate way, because that feeling of vulnerability creates a lot of shame. So ultimately just defending against that in that way, creating a lot of rigid rules, over controlling when it comes to that. You see a lot of people who are escaping into religion. I see this all the time, where people who are just ashamed of their sexuality will escape into a dogma or a religious group that actually has these rules so they can convince themselves that they're being self-righteous in their ability to defend against that sexual shame. Deep down, that's what it is. They're actually just avoiding their sexual negative emotions, such as shame. In reality, it's kind of masked behind a disciplining your sexual energy, which is understandable. There is an element of sort of a healthy discipline of your sexual energy so that you can transmute it and actually use it in a productive way. But this takes it too far and ultimately uses it as a defense mechanism. Like I mentioned, just cutting off your sexuality, being asexual, deciding that you just want nothing to do with sex at all, seeing it as repulsive, maybe sexually abusive. You may not even know why you have these abusive attitudes or even take actions of sexual just abuse, but in reality, you're being governed by this sexual shame, and perhaps it was done to you were shamed for your sexuality, and then you have that repetition compulsion to do it to somebody else. Oftentimes you see people who struggle with sexual shame to have they have a sort of an obsession or a porn addiction, right? Because in essence that allows you to dissociate and to kind of get into the fantasy world and not really be present with your own feelings. Being present with your own feelings would cause vulnerability to that sexual shame, something people who are struggling with sexual shame are going to do whatever they possibly can to avoid. Extremely self-critical. Just shaming yourself sexually, saying, oh, I'm not good enough, I don't perform well enough, performance anxiety, specifically during acts of intimacy and sex, just constantly shaming yourself. I believe sexual shame is one of the main reasons for mental illness. Now, there's many reasons why we suffer from mental illness, specifically childhood development, trauma, but I do think that causes shame, specifically sexual shame. So it's all connected, but I do think at the core of that is, again, that sexual shame, which creates that false self and creates the whole narcissistic defenses. And ultimately, keeping secrets. By having shame, specifically sexual shame, you'll keep secrets. Keeping secrets causes you to feel disconnected from yourself, from other people, and there's just a whole host of negative effects that happen if you are keeping secrets from yourself, keeping family secrets. So those are some of the symptoms that would be experienced by someone who is struggling with sexual shame. So now I want to talk about how to heal it. How do you heal sexual shame? Now, shame gets worse when you keep it a secret. So the first step is to expose it to the light, to the truth, to a conversation, to oxygen. Just get it out, communicate with somebody, just allow yourself to converse, admit, accept, this is my struggle. Validating within yourself, realizing that, I'm not crazy, I'm not just having all these painful symptoms, I don't want to just end my life or commit suicide. This is actually a reason for it. It's because I've ingested this sexual shame. I've taken all these negative messages, and as a result, I feel terrible about myself and I'm self-destructing, right? So get it out in the open, expose it, communicate, therapist, coach, sex coach, or relationship coach, just get it out. Allow yourself to get that stuff out of your system so you don't have to hold that burden of the sexual shame. It's important to own your sexual identity, realizing that we are all sexual beings. Sigmund Freud talks about essentially that is what life is. We are just developing sexually. And I actually think he's spot on in many different ways. I love the fact that he addresses it because I think that we are sexual beings at the core. I think our sexual identity is very connected to our soul energy. And therefore, if we're sexually shamed, then it's going to affect every element of our sense of self. So just own the fact that we have this. It's a part of everyone, and just accept that energy, allow that energy to flow, and it leads me to the next way of dealing with sexual shame, and just feel the shame. Don't become the shame. Don't criticize yourself for feeling your shame. Allow yourself to feel and accept feelings of shame. And once they're felt, they'll go. If you defend against that shame, it'll stay stuck in the subconscious. So feel your shame, allow it to come, allow it to go. And just feel the feelings of rage, of helplessness, of feeling sexually, not necessarily sexually abused. You don't have to be sexually abused to have sexual shame. Just realize that your sexual identity, your ability to feel safe and develop that sexual identity has been injured, and as a result, you felt helpless and you felt worthless, you felt unlovable, and that's not your fault. But you definitely want to feel those feelings so that you don't keep them trapped below in the subconscious any longer. You want to heal your wounds of childhood. You want to heal your sexual wounds. So just develop a healthy core sense of self. Confront where that shame came from. Clarity on where shame came from allows you to let go of that burden of guilt that you're the problem. Oftentimes it's our culture, it's our society, it's our parents, it's our family of origin that just had these hush-hush tones perhaps, or just had these attitudes of sexual shame. Give that back, realizing that's not your burden to carry. You don't have to hold on to that just because your family gave it to you. That has to do with feeling your feelings and letting them go. And, develop a sexual identity. And how to do that, I would say it's a combination of just seeing yourself as a sexual being, whether that's look in the mirror, whether it's masturbation, just connect with people who are comfortable in their sexuality and can help reflect that back to you and help normalize the sexual drive in your life and allow that energy to come through you without judgment, without criticism. And finally, find a sex coach, find a relationship coach that'll help you feel safe, that'll help you open up, explore yourself, and really normalize this element of yourself so that you can connect to yourself in a healthy way and relate to your own sexual identity. And that is a prerequisite for connecting to other people. So if you are struggling with sexual shame, trust me, you're not alone. And chances are, if you have been sexually shamed, then you either became codependent or narcissistic. Those became defenses. Those became relationship patterns to avoid yourself, because being with yourself, being present, and feeling that shame is intolerable. So if you're looking to heal, and if you'd like to work with me, I'm more than happy to go on a healing journey to help you heal that sexual identity, heal that sense of self, so that you can be more confident, be more present, be more happy, joyous, and just allow yourself to be a human being and be a sexual human, and then connect with other people who are healthy, that allowing you to get that fulfillment that you want, that we all want as human beings. So if this is a struggle for you, if you're struggling with sexual shame, hit me up. I can be reached via email, info@yitzepstein.com. You can reach me by phone, 818-210-6049. I offer a free 15-minute consultation, so get on the phone with me. Be more than happy to chat with you about your struggle with sexual shame and how to heal it. Thank you all so much for joining me for today's episode. Until next time, all the best.